You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden. I'm a Southern Democrat.
And my name is Mark Reed, a West Coast Republican.
And together we are The Voice of Reason. For those of you tuning in for the very first time, this is a politically motivated podcast where civil discourse is the order of the day. Where Mark and I discover we have more things that unite us than we do that divide us. Normally I would toss the ball over to my co-host Mark, but this week I have the monologue.
It's all you this week.
So there's been a lot going on ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of the news, but here's what I want to talk about. That's something that's come back up in the news recently. It's kind of linked to the COVID-19 virus. You know, President Trump has referred to it as a kung flu. It originated out of China. It is what it is. That's just a fact and reality. The ugly side of that is, as a consequence of because of the origin of the pandemic, there has been an uptick in attacks against those of Asian descent. Recently, there was a gentleman in San Francisco who went on a racist rant against this Asian family that was simply dining, having dinner. They were celebrating a birthday. And the gentleman was actually lead. He was actually a CEO, and I think his last name was Templeton, I think it was.
I don't know.
I'll have to check and see.
I've been on a tractor for the last month.
But it did not appear, if you check out the video on YouTube, it doesn't appear that he was intoxicated. He just went on a racist rant, and it was horrible. He later apologized for his actions. I like the people. I don't believe that it was sincere because he said what he said, and he was forced to leave the restaurant, which kind of leads me into something else that has occurred. 2 years ago, Jesse Hamilton, who was a senator of New York, he had a white person call 911 on him because he was simply campaigning, and they thought he didn't belong in the neighborhood. Now, at that time, he supported legislation that made these type of 911 calls a misdemeanor hate crime violation. And I agree with it because it just happens way too often. There was a outside of what happened with the CEO of the Soul 8, which is a tech company out of San Francisco. There was a gentleman, the young woman named Amy Cooper, who worked for Franklin Templeton Company. And she was the one that called 911 saying because there was a black man who was doing some bird watching, and he accosted her, not in a confrontational way, but simply told her, your dog wasn't on a leash. And she promptly called the police and said, there's a black man threatening me. She was subsequently fired by that company. Now, it is unfortunate that these sort of things are occurring. And so, and I'm going to say this very tongue-in-cheek, there has been legislation that was been proposed recently. And anybody that is familiar with the terminology used by African Americans, when white women do this, they're called Karens. And so they are proposing legislation, and it is called the Karen Act, C-A-R-E-N. And what that stands for is Caution Against Racially Exploitative Non-Emergencies Act. I actually love it because I'm going to go back to something that Rodney King said years ago. Can't we all just get along? We are in a very serious situation with the COVID-19 pandemic. Our economy is in the toilet as a result. There has been a tremendous loss of jobs. We have children that can't go to school because of this. We have senior citizens that have died because of this virus. There are a lot of worse things that are going on in the world, and we need to make better use of our time than making these fake calls to 911. We all need to put aside whatever our petty differences aside and just come together as a community, as a country, as one people. That's what we need to do. That's my monologue for this week.
You know, it's interesting, Ted. You know, you're bringing up a symptom of, I believe, the core problems that are going on in America. And I sent you over a video of Edward Griffin that did a interview. One of his interviewers interviewed a KGB a former KGB agent.
Oh, yes, yes.
That defected to the United States in 1984. And he was talking about the psychological warfare that the communists and the world was implementing on the United States of America.
Very interesting.
It was the demoralization, the destabilization, and then the crisis mode, and then normalization. And he was amazed how fast they went through the demoralization by training and teaching children, anti-American or anti-patriotic feelings, and talking about how communism or socialism works. And he was amazed how fast they did. They anticipated it would take 20 to 25 years. Mm-hmm. And this is all Marxist, Lenin, stuff. And he was amazed how fast they blew through it. That it was accomplished thoroughly, 3 generations of retraining of children, within 25 years. And then there's no moral rudders on society anymore. No. And we see that now. We really see it now. You see what's happening in the schools and on the international level, the national level, and it's really concerning. I have a lot of constituents, especially in the Russian-speaking Jewish community. They're very concerned, and a lot of those are Democrats, and they're starting to look at, wait a minute, what is society doing to our next generation? They're usurping the complete authority of the parent, and teaching their children moral values. What is the school supposed to? And I know I sent an email to the school superintendent up where my grandchildren go to school, up in the Bass Lake area, Madera County. And I was like, why are you politicizing things as a school superintendent? Isn't your job specifically to teach children the necessary tools to be able to survive? They never responded. And of course, they're not going to respond because they're on a political rampage. Then you have the destabilization. Destabilization drives into, they don't care about what foods, they don't care what you do. There's the law and order starts disintegrating, and they take away the norms. They anticipated a 10-year to a 15-year mark to accomplish this. They've accomplished that already.
Well, and you look at it, and it's not just Russia. Look at and we've talked about this on the show.
Yeah.
Well, you look at what China does with the way that they financially support some of our college institutions, and how they really and truly altered their mindset, thinking that the way that Chinese communism is okay, that we're the ones that are wrong.
Well, think about the aspect of lawlessness, right? The Confucius Institutes that you're talking about.
Right, correct.
China funded. And the colleges, Yale, Harvard, the rest of them, they did not report millions of dollars that were being contributed to the college and contributed directly to some of the professors. This is now a culture of corruption that is accepted on a norm. Look at the college tuition thing with all these movie stars and high affluent individuals that talk about the less privileged individuals, but yet they're walking around like hypocrites as privileged. Well, let me just give $500,000 to get my kid into school.
All right, yeah. Right? So submit fake documents with the assistance of some criminals.
But when you think about that process, did you watch the tape I sent you?
Oh, I did.
You did.
I did, yeah.
So you think about the demoralization, the destabilization. What did he talk about in there? He says you can show somebody a mountain of evidence that it's wrong, and they won't believe you. They just won't believe it. Mm-mm. You can take them over to the concentration camps over in Germany, over in Russia. You built those 20 years ago. This didn't happen. That's why MacArthur said take all the pictures you possibly can to document what took place here in the concentration camps in Germany, because you know what? Somewhere in the future, somebody's going to say, this never happened.
They're going to say that it never happened.
It never happened.
Exactly.
Because the atrocity is so bad, but it's not that. People forget. Mm-hmm. This is why I've been opposed of removing a lot of the statues about the South and the North, the battle, the Civil War, because I've studied a little bit of the Civil War, not a lot, not massively in depth, but you look at it the 3 years prior to the Emancipation Proclamation Act, and the moral, spiritual, religious aspects of it, the economic aspects of it, the government aspects of it, the states' rights versus the federal government, the large centralized government. You look at that, and it's a study that really needs to be studied. And we're going into an era, through that video I sent you, the demoralization, destabilization, where they're centralizing the power of the federal government. And this is why when we did the Police Reform Act bill, I said this is a crock of crap,
Right.
because it's really bringing the power over all police agencies to the central government, to the federal government. It's usurping the states' rights, and it is. You look at that destabilization. That's what the major part we're in now is destabilization, but it's crisis mode. Now we're in this crisis mode. We've never responded to a pandemic. We've had several of them in the last 50 years.
Yes, we have.
We have not responded like this ever, shutting down the entire economy. Okay? You look at what the press is doing, and I've said this working in diversity, and I've said it to you before. I don't like people who use percentages, because he used to come up to me and say, "Yeah, American Indians, their employment has gone up 100%." Yeah, it went from 1 to 2. Okay.
And you and I both know, and I believe everybody out there would agree, numbers can be deceiving. Percentages can be deceiving. You can take, Mark and I can take the exact same data and come up with two different results, simply based on our perspective, because numbers can be manipulated. They simply can be.
Well, I'm sure you saw the reports in Texas. You know, the COVID ICU, numbers have blown up. They've increased by 500%.
I haven't seen the 500%.
500%.
I saw 60%. I didn't see 500.
It went 500% in Texas, and it went from the ICU beds. I believe it went from, I think it was like 15 or 16 to 89. It's like, okay, well, wait a minute. That's still not a lot.
Well, okay? and again, it's like we talk about it. If you keep it in perspective, look, the one thing that they anticipated is that there was going to be an increase in people contracting COVID-19. That was going to be expected, especially when the businesses reopened. Not everybody practiced social distancing. But the crucial number is not the number of cases, new cases that are reported. You have to take a look at the number of deaths that are going to be reported.
That's way down.
Exactly it is. Because at some point, and we've used this phrase before, we're going to become a herd community. We're going to. Where the majority of us is going to be walking around with that disease. And of course, the mindset is, and the belief set is, that exposed to it enough, our bodies will then produce enough antibodies where it will have no more effect upon us as a cold or the flu. Now, and there are still people here today that are still susceptible to the flu and could pass from it. And at some point, COVID-19, which is another version of the flu, is going to reach and accomplish that same status. So you don't look at the number of new cases that are being reported, and I know the increase is not simply due because of testing. It's because of the fact that there are simply more people are being exposed to it because not everybody's practicing safe protocols. But you have to look at the number of deaths, and the number of deaths nationwide in the United States are down.
Well, you look at that aspect of it, and people are, they're fed up, they're tired. It's like, forget this garbage, And you look at, this is where I look at data that's coming in. The biggest thing is President Trump said he's he's not funding the World Health Organization anymore. Well, the World Health Organization, as I stated in the last episode, they finally admitted China has never reported the virus. The World Health Organization found out by other means. The World Health Organization praised China's response, gave complete credit to China for what they did. Mm-hmm. Why are the Democrats and the Democrat leadership sitting there chastising President Trump for pulling funding? Why do you want to even fund an organization that lies right to your face? And you know my character pretty well. Mm-hmm. I'm a flawed man. I make mistakes just like any other man.
Right.
However, one thing I've always stated is that if you lie to me, your word is worthless. If your word is worthless, you are worthless. You don't have to be a perfect person in life, but your word is your bond, your word is your gold, your word is your worth. So when a person lies, they become worthless. They're actually worthless, and it takes a while to build that trust back up.
Agreed.
To be able to, it's like if your son lies to you, it's like it wounds you to the point where, what, do I believe you next time, son?
Yeah, you have to earn it back.
You got to earn it back.
You have to earn it back.
So the World Health Organization lied to the world. We are funding that organization like no other country is funding it.
I'm sure we are.
Okay? They lied. So we pull out. We make it sting. Earn it back. we don't mind funding you if you do the World Health
if you do
service.
your job, if you do your job,
If you do your job,
just
right.
do your job.
But why is it that the Democrats, this goes into that whole theory between the demoralization, destabilization, crisis mode, and then the new norm.
Well,
They stopped talking about the new norm. You know that.
But it's like we talked about, though, and we've said it before. The Democratic leadership are too caught up in Trump's personality. I have never seen them applaud.
I don't think it's a personality.
No.
It's power. They're power hungry.
No. But I still go back to what I said. What was the last thing that the Democratic leadership congratulated Trump on? What?
Nothing.
And this is what I mean.
Have they ever congratulated?
No,
him?
not that I'm aware of. Not at all. And this is why I said it. And I likened it to when Obama was in office. I don't recall too many times when the Republicans congratulated him or anything, and it was the same thing when Clinton.
Yeah.
It's too polarized. It's just too polarized. Like you said, if you are investing in a company who is not doing their job, are you going to keep investing in them? No, you're going to pull the money out that you've been investing and says, okay, now you have to prove your worth to me again before I can invest more money. It's a very logical, pragmatic business decision. And you have to remember that Trump is a businessman. At the end of the day, you strip away everything else, he's a businessman. And he said that on part of his campaign. He's about making money. He's about helping the American economy. He's about making sure that our allies were paying their fair share in NATO. Why was the burden so heavy on the United States? Us becoming the world police. So he is taking these steps because it was costing our country too much money. And that's just good business sense.
And every presidential candidate has promised to do the same thing, and they never got results.
Right.
President Trump got results. He got results. They're paying more money. They're paying their fair share. He's looking at it saying, if you don't pay, we pull out. Tough. We don't need to be your police force.
Right. And I think
we're out of here. But this goes into, because we're going to go to a break in 1 minute. This goes into when you look at the validity of an employee. My opponent, he has authored 163 bills. Okay, 3 of them were passed. 2 of them renaming a post office. 1 of them was an amendment to an immigration bill.
No, wait a minute. Wait. Did he actually author?
These are the ones he authored.
He authored, okay.
163,
right.
But only 3 of them passed. 2 of them renaming a post office that never gets any opposition.
Right.
And 1 was an amendment to an immigration bill. 160 bills never passed. That's a 98% failure rate in 23 years. Okay, he signed on or co-sponsored. It's just signing on. You jump on the coattail.
Right.
Of
We
somebody
talked about that.
On 3,868 bills. Only 268 of them passed into law. It's a 97% failure rate. He can't even identify a good bill.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you, to political neophytes, and what Mark and I are talking about, just imagine every time you go to a grocery store, there's somebody standing outside. Will you sign this petition? Sign this petition. You haven't read it. You haven't looked at it. They give you a quick sound bite. If you like what the sound bite says, you sign it. And that's what his opponent does. Yeah. He's giving a quick sound bite here. Why don't you sign this? And it just shows that you shared or you partnered in this legislation. Yeah, it might look good on paper, but if it doesn't pass, or if it goes nowhere, or if it ends up, in the circular file, then what's the point? Just because you can say that you did it?
You authored this bill, you co-signed this bill, and that's what he does, and he's done it so many times. But the bizarre part about it is the Democrats in the district sit there and gobble it up like he's doing something. It's like, no, you're not doing it. You're wasting people's time and money.
Well, it goes back to what we just talked about with that video clip that I watched on YouTube. Yeah. That lost film from 1984. And it's like, it doesn't matter what evidence you present to somebody. Yeah. They just ignore it. They just overlook it. And I don't know what it would take for those constituents to realize that this gentleman who's been in office for decades is not doing the job that he was elected to do. Really and truly.
Which is primarily what you're elected to do when you're elected to Congress, is to represent 720,000 constituents. Mm-hmm. You're not there to represent the party. You're not there to represent, the president. You're there to represent your constituents and bring the concerns, needs, and issues of your district to D.C.
Right.
and write legislation up that will help them, and you sell that legislation to the other Congress people in order to get it passed. That's all you do.
I mean, I haven't heard any steps that this gentleman that he's done as far as the way that the COVID-19 has been ravaging the homeless. You don't hear anything about it.
We'll get into that right after the break. We'll see you at the other end of the break. We got to pay our bills right now.
There you go.
All righty. Welcome back to the Voice of Reason with Ted Durden and Mark Reed. You know, you were talking about what has he done. You talk about, doing stunts to get votes. And that irritates you just as much as it irritates me.
Pandering.
Okay. There is a, kind of a daily, I think, I go to my bank, over there on Ventura Boulevard in Sepulveda, and there's always, 10, 15 people, Black Lives Matter, standing there. My opponent, I hate even saying his name, Mr. BS, he goes there and he holds the sign and he takes pictures and he posts them out on Facebook.
Like he's doing something.
Like he's really doing something. He's really accomplishing something. And then he goes over to Sherman Oaks, to the homeowners association there, and he another photo op, takes some pictures of gathering supplies and food, handing out supplies and food to people, and he takes pictures. And when we looked at the pictures, we're like, well, wait a minute, he's handing somebody a grocery bag full of folded up grocery bags. There was no food in it. It was just his photo op. He doesn't even have the strength to pick up a bag of food and hand it to somebody, right? It's a bag. Yeah, we blew up the picture. It shows it. It's a bag full of grocery bags, paper grocery bags. Then he was handing a smaller bag of food. The bag looked like it ripped. He has no gloves on, right? This is the COVID-19 era. You'd think you'd wear gloves, right? He handing it. The bag is ripped, and it's like, people commented on it in his Facebook. It really looks like this guy has never handled a bag of groceries in his life.
He probably hasn't.
And it's bizarre. But there's another thing that came about, and I have it on some confidence at this point, that he wants to defund the police department. Right? He's for that.
God.
He's Black Lives Matter in the public's budget in the city of Los Angeles. He has disparaged the LAPD as well. He's for open borders. It's bizarre the thing. He's basically for lawlessness is what he's for. However, saying all of that, he's making a demand from his HOA in Porter Ranch. Get a load of this. He's afraid of protesters, so he's demanding the HOA supply him with more security for protection and that they pay for it.
What?
He lives in a gated community, the Renaissance in Porter Ranch. He has demanded,
that the HOA provides security.
The HOA provide more security specifically for him because he's afraid of the protesters. And he doesn't want to pay for it. He wants the HOA to pay for it.
Wow.
Doesn't that just blow your mind?
That really does.
I mean, I heard this. I'm waiting for documentation so I can, blast it out there quite heavily. It's like, well, wait a minute. This is what we all want. We all want security from lawlessness. This is why we pay taxes for some basic services called our police departments.
Our fire department.
Right? Fire department, our jail systems, our prison systems, our court systems for due process, right? Trash pickup, Department of Transportation to clean the streets and fix the lights and stuff.
Right.
We want our communities to be safe. We want our communities to be taken care of. That's why we pay taxes. That's why we pay property taxes. Well, he wants to defund all of that, spend the money somewhere else, and then he demands his HOA, private funds. This is why, you know, I've looked at houses, you know, up at Bass Lake. That's where I kind of want to retire, is in Bass Lake.
Beautiful area.
And I love the area. And I went to one house, and they gave me the book of CC&Rs, right? And HOA demands. The book was literally
it was a tome.
It was about 4.5 inches thick.
And that was the book. That was a tome.
And I was like, "You got to be joking me, man!" I was like, "No, I can't handle that." Because I get more nervous about the totalitarianism that takes place in most HOAs. You get somebody in there who has nothing better to do than to tell everybody else what to do. So I was like, "No, beautiful home." I mean, it was a gorgeous home. It had its own little private bay and everything else. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. The numbers were right. Couple negatives on it, but the biggest negative was that 4.5-inch book.
That's crazy.
CC&Rs and HOA demands, and it was like, no, man, you could give me this house for free, and I'd sell it the next month.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Rather to do.
And it's
all
because
that.
of the kind of demand that my opponent has just made on his HOA. Right now, if he has a friend that's the president of the HOA, right? What they do? Oh, okay, sure thing. You know, we'll get you the new security. We'll have it parked out front of your house, kind of like Nuri Martinez did with LAPD parked out in front of her house.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, are we in Russia? Are we in Venezuela?
Come on.
This is our resources. This is our community. It's not your resources in your community. This is our resources, our community. It's not there for you to dictate for your services to have. It's like this is garbage. You want extra security, hire it.
Thank you. You already live in a gated community as it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't put it this way. I'll show you off camera.
Okay.
I've got like 6 credible death threats. I had somebody in Chatsworth calling for my assassination.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even joking. I have turned them over to PD. There's nothing they can do because they say, well, unless they actually physically do something, right? They just consider it nonsense.
Somebody's just blowing off.
Just blowing off. And and I've got buddies. My family's LAPD and stuff. So it's kind of like they just say be aware. That's all. So I am very much aware. But I also look at it, if it's your time, it's your time, An airplane wheel's going to fall out of the air and hit you in the head.
Right.
So I don't get nervous about it. But here's a guy, my opponent, pushing and promoting lawlessness, pushing and promoting a dissent in society, pushing and promoting this racial divide that we've never seen. You've grown up with racism. I've grown up with racism. But I have. Have you seen it this bad?
No. Well, you have to understand why I grew up, Mark. So I have seen it. I have seen it pretty bad. And then just for the record, I've said this. I don't consider Black Lives Matter to be a racist group. They're not a hate group. There are some elements of Black Lives Matter that I don't like. That a gentleman talked about. He'll burn the system down. No, I don't agree with that. Period whatsoever. But I don't care what group you are. You're going to have the extremists. My son and I talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
And my take on Black Lives is very simple. And there was a poster that was made that I think summarized it very nicely. And it was a picture of a black person. Says, look, I agree. All lives matter.
Yeah.
All we're trying to say is everybody needs to understand that black lives are important as well. Because there are a disproportion when you see the police brutality that is reported, because I know a lot goes on with all races that isn't reported. And certain things need to stop. Like I was talking about earlier during my monologue. These white people calling 911 on black people who are just living out their lives.
Yeah,
it even happened to my son. It happened to my son recently. He was at a B&B in Newport Beach. Somebody called the police on his friends, on him, because now he was the only black kid in the group, and they thought that he was trying to break into the place. These things are just ridiculous.
Well, that ties into when we had Mr. Woodson on the show. We talked about I wanted the definition of prejudice.
And racism.
That'd be, but discrimination, prejudice, discrimination, and then racism. Mm-hmm. It's a progression.
Right.
And prejudice exists in ignorance because it's a judgment founded in with no facts or life experience.
Right.
We all have prejudices.
Right.
Okay. Now, based on society, based on circumstances, based on home upbringing, you can create discrimination, meaning that I just don't like you. I'm not hiring you. You know nothing about the person, you know,
Right.
and that becomes discriminatory. I'm not going to sell you the house. I'm not going to rent you the house.
Right.
I'm going to fire you because I don't like you. You know, and it's just a prejudice action. But discrimination is an action. It's an action.
Right.
And racism is another action. I've always attributed hostility and hatred involved in it as well. You're trying to inflict discomfort and or harm. And I look at that and I say, okay, you go through prejudice. It's fostered and fanned. The flames of that prejudice is fanned to discrimination. Discrimination no longer is satisfactory to you, so then you start racist acts.
Right.
And that's when you start doing really stupid things.
Right.
Okay. And you know, but it's two of those are verbs. One is a characteristic flaw that through education you can change that. And we're going to go to our mid-break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of things. I have a little thing that I want to talk about real fast, a minute, right when we come back, about something I want to talk about in the next show about taxes and stuff that's not being addressed.
Oh, okay,
because
sure.
all the things that are happening now is actually a huge smokescreen for Congress not to really be doing their job. And you think about that for a minute. We're stuck on this stuff.
On the COVID-19
and the racism, the laws, and discrimination, and inequality,
and the stimulus packages, and all of that. So
all this garbage. But you start looking at what Congress really should be doing with the taxes, tax reforms, and businesses making the economy going again. So I'm going to make a little statement about that. Then we're going to dive into some of these neat things that are going on in Seattle and here in California.
Okay.
And it's legislation creating equality.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun.
Right after the break, we will get into that discussion. See you then.
I'll ask for more time.
15
seconds, Mr.
You've been getting more time all night. And you still lie.
BS doesn't work here.
Go ahead, give more time.
You could have a lot more time if you showed up to one of my debates.
Hi, my name is Ted Durden, and I want to take a moment to talk to you about trust, and I trust churchandlaw.com. When it comes to workers' compensation and employment law, you can trust churchandlaw.com. If you ever need legal advice, you can rely on it's churchandlaw.com. Black and white, no gray, churchandlaw.com. 818-230-3110. churchandlaw.com, a law firm you can trust and count on.
I accept the League of Women Voters invitation. That's why I'm here.
The complete voter suppression. The League of Women Voters LA chapter was the one who invited him to the 5 debates with the battered women's organization, with a synagogue, 2 churches, and the American Legion. And he turned down them all flat with the League of Women Voters moderating. I didn't have a problem with it. I've never had a problem with it. I think it's a fantastic organization. I've never berated the League of Women's Voters. You berated women in general just by the way you run your office. Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. Next week, I want to discuss some things I was talking about. Taxes. What Congress should be doing, and some of the things I'd be kind of addressing if I'm blessed enough to be elected. And it's like, you think about it. Why should a teacher who spends funds for his or her classroom not be able to deduct those expenditures from his or her taxable income?
Right.
While millionaires and billionaires pay less than they should. Does that appear equitable to you?
No, not at all. No.
I mean, even cops, what everybody's after, they have to pay for their own ammo, their uniforms, and everything else. They're given a small stipend that pays for it, but they destroy uniforms quite often.
Well, sure.
Doing their job.
And they can't deduct that on the tax return?
No, they can't anymore. And that was part of Trump's tax reform. It was actually one of the failures in the tax reform.
Wow.
And it really hit teachers big time because teachers' funding is cut heavily.
Right.
Okay, so they go in there and they buy different things for their classroom. They'll buy music teachers and stuff will buy certain instruments, and these cost a lot of money.
Some just buy even just basic supplies.
Basic supplies, and they can't write it off their own taxes, their income taxes. And
That's
it's like,
insane.
well, why not?
That's insane.
It is totally insane. So these are things that need to really seriously be addressed. And the goal of Congress should be to legislate equitable treatment in all areas. Currently the tax code allows beneficial tax treatment for long-term capital gains, and I talked about this before, which is unfairly benefits taxpayers with capital gains. He says, I'll offer a full explanation next week. I want to kind of get into that next week,
Okay.
because it is things that are being discussed a little bit. Joe Biden came out today with his speech and his content of what he wants to do as a president. And they dissected it. Now, some of his blue-collar rhetoric is the old-school Democrat, of the blue-collar worker, how we're going to help you and what we're going to do. But then he dove into some of the most bizarre stuff. He wants to give 22 million illegal immigrants citizenship status, and that will guarantee Democrats' position in office for decades. Because you're talking about 22 million new Democrats. Okay, you other things that he wants to do, felons, right? He wants to allow all felons the right and privilege to vote once again, because when you become a felon, you lose your right to vote.
Lose your right, yeah.
Okay, they'll automatically be Democrats. Okay, they're going to remember that. So what they're doing is they are taking certain elements of society and saying, we're going to reward you, you reward us back, vote for us. Whereas the Republican Party has always been, you carry your own, you have personal responsibility. We will help you if you're helping yourself, and we will help you in times of emergent times. This is what our social programs are all about. And, with the welfare and so forth. And you help people when they're down. Everybody believes in that.
Yeah.
I do. I do as a human being. I can't say as a Republican. I believe as a human being.
Sure.
You help people when they're down, and you build them up and send them on their own. You don't help them when they're down and keep them down in order to get benefit out of them.
No.
And unfortunately, I believe that this is what has been going on for quite some time with Democrat leadership. And so when you look at what Joe Biden is proposing with the 22 million illegal immigrants being given citizenship status, and this isn't just Mexicans. He's talking about across the board. Everybody with visas that have overstayed their visas, you're going to get citizenship. He wants to give it to them all. And so they're going to be beholden to the Democrat Party because now they become a citizen, now they can register to vote, and what are they going to do? The Democrat may be a legal citizen. I love Democrats. So I'm going to vote Democrat.
Yeah, but the reality of it, and I'll say this, it's hard for me to listen to Joe Biden. I can't remember the last time that I did.
It's hard for me to understand Joe Biden.
Sometimes it's hard for Joe Biden to understand himself. I'm sorry. Some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth. Anyway, it's right up there with when Trump said "Kofifi." Anyway, same thing.
Same thing.
The reality is, I don't care what he may want to do when he's talking about legalizing 22 million immigrants. I don't think that would ever pass. I would be hard pressed to believe that would ever come to pass.
The president can do that. That's not a.
It doesn't have to be approved by Congress.
Not by Congress. No. I'm trying to think of the commentator.
He can do it as an executive order.
He can do it as an executive order. Yes.
That's insane.
Well, yeah. I mean, based on the way the courts have been approving certain things lately, it would pass the muster and go through. This is where it gets dangerous. Where our elections. I was talking to somebody in the district the other day, and we were discussing the election process, and I said, we really need to, on a bipartisan way, put a strong focus on bringing election integrity back. We don't. You talk to the majority of people anymore, and you ask them, "Do you think our elections are valid?" And they'll tell you no. They will tell you no. I'll bet you. I'll bet you whatever you want to bet. A good steak dinner, whatever you want. And I'll bet you 3 out of 5, at least 3 out of 5 people will tell you I don't believe in our election process.
Well, I don't know if I would agree with that, Mark. Is our election
Let's go out on the street and
Sure, that's fine. You let me pick the neighborhood.
That's fine. I'm comfortable in any neighborhood.
But our election system.
I bet you if we go to a black community, that might be 5 out of 5 would say it's all bullshit.
They probably would. They probably would.
So that's not a big threat.
Probably would. See, now you made me forget what I was going to say, man. I know I was going to say. Anyway, look, our election system may not be perfect. Far from it. It has its flaws. I still think it's one of the best in the world. I still do.
It is, but the question is does the average person in America believe in the integrity of the election process? It is the great process. Yeah. It really is.
And I tell you what. I think and what you're saying is probably true. And I think here's where it's going to diverge at. Because you have a large swath of society that do not believe in the Electoral College. They don't. You have a large swath of society that want to go by way of the popular vote. I believe in the Electoral College.
So do I.
Because of the fact everybody knows that, states that have larger populations, the smaller states that don't, they're at a distinct disadvantage.
Oh, wait,
that's why the Electoral College was designed the way that it was.
Well, the Electoral College was designed to force the candidates to go to the less populated areas and give their pitch. And the Electoral College hasn't really seriously been taught in high school anymore, or even in college, or why it is. And today, if you ask people, how many offices, right, statewide, citywide, nationwide, are decided by the Electoral College? One flippin' office is. One office.
That's it. Just the president.
And it's not even the VP either. It's just
just the president. That's it.
One person has to put together a campaign, to go out there and figure out his Electoral College map and do exactly what the Founding Fathers said. Go out here to Timbuktu with all the snaggletooth backwoods people and get their vote, get those 2 Electoral College votes, and go over to the one over here because you're going to have to get 280. Okay? So it is working perfectly the way it's supposed to.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. When you really understand what it's there for, it's working perfectly, except for the individuals. Now, both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, have taken the presidency without the popular vote but won the Electoral College.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Because the popular vote can be manipulated. See, this is why the election integrity I'm talking about, right? Now, they just busted a gang of, I think it was 8 in Texas, and unfortunately, I think it was the majority of them were black. They had a whole scheme and scam of election fraud for Democrats.
I heard about that. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was all. Did you hear about it, Jack? No, I was just reading about it today, and it's like, but this goes on. But look at the small city over here in L.A. The county of Los Angeles, the one that went up. And it was all. I think it was Hispanics and blacks, but it was primarily Hispanics and blacks neighborhood over there. I'm trying to remember the city, but they went down in flames. I mean, big time, because they really manipulated the elections over there. So this is where I think the focus, because my focus isn't looking at blame, who's to blame or why is it to blame, Republican or I don't really give a damn.
Right.
I think that we need to focus on fine-tuning our election process again. Just fine-tuning. It's not overhauling it and changing it, but fine-tuning it to bring the election integrity back. So this way, individuals who go out and vote feel my vote counted. My vote was counted. It worked. This is the process. Because now the lethargic attitude of people in every congressional district in the state of California, it's about less than 50% of the age-eligible voters are registered to vote. There's 7 million Christians, actually approaching 8 million Christians in the state of California. 50% of them are registered to vote. Hey, Governor Brown won the election with, I think, 4 million votes, and that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, but of the 50% of the, I think it's 7.5 million Christians are registered, are eligible to vote. 50% of those are registered to vote, so now you're looking at what is it, 3.75?
Yeah, 3.75,
okay.
right.
Only 50% of them show up to vote. So you're talking down, now you're dropping it down to
1.8.
1.8 million of them actually vote. So if they all were registered to vote, they all voted their values, we wouldn't have half the issues going on in California. It would
That's
be
very
red.
true.
It would be red because Christians are conservative.
Yeah, they are.
You know that? So you look at why aren't they voting? And I loved it when Ronald Reagan came out, and he would always walk into his war room. And first one is in California. He says, why do Republicans not vote? Why aren't they energized to vote? And so he came back, and it was the famous statement, is Republicans need to stop using pastel colors. We need to use bold, bright colors and show the difference between us and the Democrat leadership and how it will benefit you. So the voter can look at it and say, you know what? I don't like the direction of the Democrat leadership anymore. Well, let's give this leadership a try, okay, because the bold new ideas. And this is what needs to take place today. So when he would go into his war room, he used to ask his staff and his campaign staff, says, how do we reach the voter? How do we energize the voter to go out and vote? And how do we get him to vote for me? He didn't walk into the war room and say, how do I reach the Republicans? No, the voter. Because when you become an elected official, you are representing everybody.
Yes.
Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Democrat that doesn't like you and your positions, you're still representing the Democrat. Even
Right.
the Green Party person
Mm-hmm.
who's cared and concerns about the environment, you're still representing them. The party doesn't put you into office. Your election, the people in your district put you into office. So you're representing every single one of them. And you have to look at the cares and concerns of everybody there.
You
And they're
have to.
all valid.
Right, you have
They're
to.
all valid.
Yeah.
The Democrats have valid positions. The Republicans have valid positions. The Independents have valid positions. The Green Party has valid positions. But it's up to the elected individual to sit back, listen to all of the not complaints, the
Their
issues,
concerns,
the
what their concerns are.
And you assess the problems. You come to an agreement of what the problems actually are. You come to an agreement what are the root causes of the problems. Then you come to an agreement what are the possible solutions. And you come to a choice and decision of the most equitable solution possible. This gets us into the couple subject matters, the one that California is trying to now put through the legislation, the Assembly and then the Senate, and Newsom said he'll sign it. And that is a proposal to remove the Discriminatory Act, I believe it was the 1980s or early 90s, and allow businesses to start charging people based on ethnicity because certain ethnicities are underprivileged, so you can charge them less, and the privileged ones you can charge more. How do you like that?
That's crazy.
I came back right away. I said, well, I'm American Indian. You know, everybody here stole my ancestors' land, stole all our food, stole all our ability to live free, so I want everything free.
Oh, just
I want housing free. I want medical free. I want my food free. I want everything free. You know, if you want to go that route. And then my campaign manager looked at me and said, well, I'm Irish, you know. We had the Irish slavery going on here. How about reparations too? You know, in the black community, we want reparations too. It's like, you know, if you get in line for this crap, who's going to pay for it? You know, it's just really, then you had Ilhan Omar coming out in one of her speeches just recently. She goes, we need to tear apart the economic system and political systems of the United States. She wants to destroy the United States. She wants to literally destroy it. And this is supporters of Brad Sherman, and Sherman supports them, and they're very anti-Semitic. And it's like, you know, we need to start electing people who care about the people of their districts. And collectively, these 435 congressmen and women are caring about the United States in a whole and not a political movement.
Okay, I'm just dumbfounded because I don't think that she wants to destroy the United States. I'll disagree with that.
Okay.
And I don't agree with her politics, but I disagree with that statement. But this whole thing about having businesses charge someone based on their, for lack of a better term, their race and the social status, that's contrary to everything the United States stands for.
Yeah.
At its core. At its core.
But it's not just what the United States stands for, it's what the people of the United States stand for. Because remember, in every tragedy, we watch it. You have black people helping white people. You have white people helping black people. You have black and white people helping Asian people. Because the core of America, we look at each other as human beings, and we really care.
But here's my point, though. My point is this. The United States at its core, when you take away the humanity, we're a capitalist society.
Absolutely.
That's what we are. We're all about, in this country, which makes us one of the greatest countries in the world, you can make your own success.
Yeah.
You know, it's about making money. You charge whatever you believe the market will bear. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's a business out there that wants to charge somebody less, because I can tell you right now, there's a restaurant in the South, and it's a little joint. It's a little joint. And all this guy does is serve comfort food all day. I'm talking about ribs and fried chicken mostly. Mm. And there are times when there are people who will go to his business, go to his restaurant, and they will tell that man, all I got is $1. He will feed them for that $1. Yeah. Now, that's his generosity. This restaurant doesn't make a whole lot of money. He does it out of the goodness of his heart. Now, if you choose to do that as a business owner, mm-hmm. That's your right. That's your choice. Mm-hmm. But to try to implement some sort of legislation that is going to require me to do that, I got a problem with that.
That's insane.
Okay, you don't tell me how to run my business. You don't get to tell me how much money I make. And I'm telling you, what we talked about earlier about that videotape, that is a very slippery slope straight towards socialism. That's where that's headed to.
Yep.
And that's not the sort of society or country that the United States of America is. I mean, I told you I didn't like Gavin Newsom. I never did.
And on that note, we're going to pay our bills and play our last ad, and then we'll talk about the Seattle's bill and proposal of what do they call it here?
Being on white.
City of Seattle host segregated training for white employees to undo their whiteness.
Oh. Ain't that gonna be fun?
We'll be right back.
My erstwhile opponent says I don't accept debate invitations. I accept the League of Women Voters invitation.
The League of Women Voters LA chapter was the one who invited him to the 5 debates with the battered women's organization, with a synagogue, 2 churches, and the American Legion. And he turned down them all flat with the League of Women Voters. Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. We were just looking at a posting here of one of the BLM leaders saying that the white.
Let me read it. Let me read it. Let me read it. Yeah. Okay, and it's like I said earlier. You know, you have every faction. Black Lives Matter is no different.
Well, I think the original startup of Black Lives Matter had a certain focus, but it's been taken over by an international organization now. Well, it's a major because my brother and I and a couple others have looked up the manifestos.
Okay.
Of Black Lives Matter and the international arm of it, and they're filtering hundreds of millions of dollars into campaigns from international funds, and it's a way of getting around it to get what they want.
Yeah, but the point is this: it actually started out of New York. The woman who actually started Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Okay. And it was meant to simply to elevate social awareness of what was happening disproportionately.
For justice.
For black men or black people in general.
Black people in general.
Really. And so she was interviewed recently, and she disagreed with this extremist arm. Now, she said that arm of Black Lives Matter, we don't associate them whatsoever. And this woman, who I'm about to read what she said, right. Okay, this woman says whites are subhuman genetic defects. Now, I'm sorry.
What's her name, in case anybody
Well,
wants to
I don't
look
know if
this up?
that's her name. It says Seth Lard, but they,
Just click on the link, and it should pull it up here.
but the point is, and again, that is inflammatory racial rhetoric. Who was it? What's the name? Okay, Yusra Kogoli. Whatever. Okay.
But see, this is where all good thought processes sometimes get hijacked.
Right.
And
exactly.
no different than your party has been taken over by progressives. I mean,
Well,
we've joked,
oh my God,
we've
yeah.
joked about this quite
Yeah,
often.
we have.
You know, about how your father would be probably rolling around in his grave a little bit, and definitely your grandfather would be rolling around in his grave,
Yeah.
massively going, "What the hell happened to my party?" You know, and this is where people have to wake up and not, you know, how would you say, surrender their direction to somebody else.
They can't.
You
They
can't
can't.
do that. You
They
have
can't.
to be active. You know, and I still want to do an episode, 2 episodes, where
Oh, right.
you read the national platform of
For
the Democrat
Democrats.
Party and the Republican, and I do the same. We're going to discuss what we agree and
Right, we
disagree
still
with.
need to do that,
Same thing,
definitely.
the state party, because, and I've said this to a lot of people out there. You know, people want to support Black Lives Matter, but they haven't read the manifesto. They haven't looked at the funding aspects of it. They don't know where it's going. It sounds good. But remember in that tape, the one tape I sent you, it's Malcolm X. I'm quoting Malcolm X.
Right,
believe it or
yeah.
not. You know, Malcolm X warned
He sure did.
warned the black community
About liberal Democrats.
straight out. Not liberal Democrats, just
Liberal.
white liberals and conservative whites, that they will use the black community. And the worst of the two was the liberal white, because they have perfected lying and deceit and underhandedness, but they will use the black community as tokens to get what they want, discard the black community when they get what they want.
Oh yeah.
And you watch it constantly. I mean, I've
Every
had
election cycle.
every election cycle, every little uproar, and it's like, well, hold on a minute, you know. And I came at this one person. I said, wait a minute, what makes you, this white person, right? What makes you an authoritative to save a black person's life? Why don't you empower the black person to save his own or her own life?
Absolutely. And on that note,
Okay.
let's go to this unwhite whatever that is.
Well, Seattle, City of Seattle will host segregated training for white employees to undo their whiteness. And it was brought out in one of the talk shows already of saying, what would you say if the state of Arizona sent a letter out to all of its employees saying, we are going to put you through new training, to all the black employees, right? We're going to put you through a new training so you can undo your blackness and join society as a whole person. You know, you'd see the lawsuits fly. You'd see the
absolutely.
warfare going
Right,
on.
definitely.
And but Seattle is doing just that towards white employees of the government, to undo their whiteness, to get rid of their guilt, to understand what they've done to society. And it's like, hold on a minute, you're trying to say the perception of white, because white skin, our skins, look at our skins, pretty goddamn close in color, right?
Right, yeah.
And it's like, but I'm considered white. Okay, and people accuse me of white privilege. I'm a bigot and I'm a racist because I'm white, and it's like, are you kidding? And I asked this gal today on my opponent's Facebook page. I said, "Can you?" She said, "I can smell your white privilege all the way over here." So I went back and I asked her. I said, "Can you please explain what white privilege is to me?" I said, "Me being a descendant of the American Indian." I said, first of all, in the back of my head, growing up, I had a high school, a diploma, and I didn't even know I had a high school diploma until I was about 38, because it didn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. I know you work hard,
Right.
and it pays off.
Right.
So my white privilege allowed me 70 to 80 hours a week for about 40 years. And I've been successful. Mm-hmm. Okay, I own businesses. I own houses. I have been flown around the country to speak on diversity. I've done counseling. I've done all kinds of things. I've been the national rep for American Indians, dealing with government issues. I've sat across the table of boardrooms with the studios and the networks. I'm sitting at the head of the table, and I got 70 people around the table, and I'm running this meeting. And this is a guy with a high school diploma. It's called common sense. It's called drive. It's called understanding the market. It's understanding what it is you're discussing and talking about. And that's all it is. Your college degrees don't give that to you.
No, they don't.
Your whiteness, your blackness, your Asianness, your what doesn't give that to you.
You know,
So,
and it's kind of funny to me, all this, with the pandemic and the racial strife. For me, really and truly, Mark, and I would like to believe that you would agree, it really comes down to one thing. It really and truly does. And it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself.
Play it forward.
That's all you do. Treat your fellow person, the human being next to you, regardless of the race, sex, whatever, sexuality. Treat them decently. Treat them civilly. It's not about white privileges. It's not about being black and underprivileged. It's about the way that you treat each other. Just be civil. Just be decent. And I don't understand why that is so damn hard.
As Mother Teresa said, you treat people with dignity.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Civility. Every human being is deserving of dignity. You give them the opportunities. You give them the support they need to stand up. So I said, I look at these white liberals, and it's like, you're there saving the black person. That means you're above them. It's like, who the hell are you to do this? I mean, you want to help a black person in society, start a business, give them a damn job.
Thank you. I mean, really, truly. Just stop being a character out of an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel, Tarzan.
Become a big brother.
Yeah.
To some black children, that don't have fathers or something, or adopt a black child, whatever. Don't stand up on your hindquarters on some righteous ass platform. I'm here to rescue and save the black community. No, you're not. You're the one who suppressed the black community for years.
Okay, don't stand out on the corner of Sepulveda and Ventura holding up a Black Lives Matter sign and then retire to your multi-million-dollar mansion in a gated community and asking your HOA to provide greater security.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I just had to say that.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us once again. We have a good lineup. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be joining us on August 20th. And so we've got some other individuals that we're going to bring on board too as guests. And one of them is, I'm going to reach out to this individual, the Cal State Northridge, who has a series. I won't use his name yet, but he has a series on black
grief.
Black grief, yeah. And so I pitched it to Ted a while back, and I asked him tonight. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "You're a senior. You're an elder in the black community, and this is a youth. Don't you want to flush out this millennial thought process?
A teachable moment.
Black grief. It's a very teachable moment for the entire black community, and it's, I've done it with the American Indian community quite a bit.
Right.
It's like, you know what? When you're out there and you say you're an American Indian, you're representing all of the community.
Right.
Okay? So, if you want to play victim, are all American Indians victims? No. If you're a victim because you chose to be a victim.
Right. And I don't believe in false or fake narratives. I don't.
Yeah.
I just
so
don't.
I'm going to reach out to him. Ted has said, this sounds like a moment here that could be fun. So I'm going to reach out to him. But Ted, go ahead and bring it on home.
All right. I'm going to go back to when I was talking during my monologue. I just want to bring this full circle. The gentleman who was in that racist rant at that Asian American family, his name is Michael Lofthouse, and he was the CEO of a tech company called Solid 8. If I were you, I wouldn't do business for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like I said, with everything that's going on in the world, it comes down to one very simple thing, and that is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And it's like a book a gentleman wrote a long time ago. Everything I needed to learn about life, I learned when I was 6 years old. And that's being nice, saying thank you, treating people as you want people to treat yourselves. And in this day and age, with everything that's going on in this world, this is what we all need. We need to come together as one people, as one community, and we need to get through this together. And I know and I believe that we will. And remember, ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. Be sure to tune in next week.
See you next week.